Hey everyone, welcome to Coaching Changes Lives. So glad you can join us this week. Now in this video, we're going to talk about direct communication, an often misunderstood competency which is so critical for us as conversationalists, for us as speakers, coaches, parents, leaders. Direct communication is one of the most important skills that you need to learn today, and I'm going to demystify that for you in this series. Now, if you're new to our channel, don't remember to hit the subscribe button and notification bell, because every single week we come to you with fresh videos, fresh ideas to really scale up and skill up your coaching abilities as well as your skills in communication as well as speaking. Now, one of the things I hope to do across the world is really to improve and enhance life, inspire change, and really make an impact in people's life all across different cultures. So I hope that every single videos that we create will truly inspire you. Now, in today's video, we're going to explore what direct communication is and how that is relevant for all of us as speakers, all of us as coaches, and why is that so important for you to practice direct communication today. Now, many people think that direct communication is about being very directive, very confrontational, because when you hear the word direct, it means that, oh, cut out the crap, get straight to the point, let's get diving. Now, one of the important things for us to consider is the cultural context by which we navigate in. So, because different cultures have different understandings, different cultures have different approaches to communication. For some cultures, they require you not to be so directive. Now, directive and direct communication are two very distinct things, right? So when we say direct communication, what are we really saying? Well, what we are saying is this: that direct communication, it's not about being directive or being roundabout kind of communication or having different metaphors to describe your communication skills. No, direct communication has to do with the ability to utilize the client's language to the maximum benefit. So it's not about my style, it's about the client's style. So if the client adopts a naturally more direct approach, meaning to say they're more directive nature, they want the facts to come forth in front of them, they want it to be more succinct, more sharp, then our approach will be one of that more precise, one of them that's sharper, that's more clear to the point. Whereas in other cultures, perhaps if you're approaching in that way, you may break rapport with the clients, because why? Culturally, they will need some time to navigate the facts and the truth. So I'll give you an example. In the Eastern culture, the tendency is that most Eastern cultures, they prefer not so directive approach in communication. Meaning to say, if there are areas of improvements, there are areas that needs work on, they would rather you tell them in a way that that is not so confrontational, that is not so demanding, that is not so top-down, that is not so hurtful, right? Because they take pride in one thing, what we call as saving the face. So saving face, it's a very Eastern cultural context. Now again, this is a generalization across all Eastern cultures. In the Eastern cultures, there's so many subcultures. So we won't have time to break down all the different subcultures, but in the subsequent videos, I will do some videos of that. So if you want me to talk about subcultures in the Eastern context, do put a comment below down and I'm going to create some more videos as well. Now, those are the Eastern cultures. What about the Central culture, where you have Africa, you have Middle East, what about their cultures? How do they differ? Now, if we notice this, the more Western the culture goes, the more directive they are. Meaning to say, they would rather give them feedback in their face. Tell them what's right, what's wrong, tell them where they could go better, tell them what's happening, so that they can make a conscious effort to change. Now, so this directive approach, or this roundabout approach, it's the styles of communication of the client. Now, in direct communication, we are applying not our natural affinity, not our natural style, but we're applying the client's approach, the language that best suits the client. So let me read to you what ICF, the International Coaching Federation, describes direct communication as, and this is what they say. Now, direct communication is the ability to communicate effectively during coaching sessions and to use language that has the greatest positive impact on the client. So it's the language that has the greatest positive impact on the client. So think about it. What is the language that has the greatest positive impact? Is it the way that I speak? Is it my style? My style must be right. Is it the ability for me to use bombastic words, or words that just confound the clients? Or is it about using simple words? Or is it about using certain phrases or certain coaching words that I use? No, really direct communication is about using the client's words, using the client's language, using the client's way of understanding, because sometimes in certain cultures, even though we may be speaking English, but the way we phrase sentences, the way we enunciate words, the way we articulate words may be very different depending on the community we are living in. So, for example, in the colloquial language, we may have certain ways that we say. For example, in the Southeastern Asian countries, we tend to have these words like, we tend to end off the sentence with can. Can. But each of the can has different nuances. What do you feel like eating? Anything can. Would you like to do that? Can. Would you want to try something new? Can. Would you want to go for dinner? Can. Would you like to go for a movie? Can. How are you feeling today? Okay, I think it's can. Right? So now notice in the Southeastern Asian culture, certain words with a different nuance have different meaning. So if we would just transcribe that and we read that, for a person from a different part of the culture, they may not understand the colloquial localized language, which is why one of the efforts that ICF take into understanding different nuances and cultures is to expand the cultural diversity and awareness all over the world. Right, we're living in a world that's not shared by ourselves alone, but there's so many people living on planet Earth, and we are sharing this Earth with all of us. Right, so it's really I would encourage all coaches, speakers, leaders to really have a teachable heart, to learn different cultures, to appreciate them. And sometimes we got to be respectful of the cultures as well. So I give an example. Recently I read an article where a particular country actually addressed someone from a different culture in their native language, not realizing that the person first language was English. The second language or the mother tongue was their second or third language. So when they try to address this person in their mother tongue, it was being felt as very offensive because the first language was English. For example, when someone meets me, any part of the world, if they were to try to use other languages other than English to speak to me, it might create a form of disrespect. It might create a form of rapport that might be broken. Why? Because the notion of using the origin of language, because I don't use my origin or my mother tongue as my first language. So my first language is English. So therefore, respecting the client's map of the world, respecting the client's language and choice of words, it's going to be very critical in the direct communication process. Now, we go at length in this in our programs, in Mastering Coaching and Transformative leadership coaching as well, and all the different programs that we have. So if you want to check out some of the programs, do remember to check out our links below or connect with one of us, right? We're more than happy to help you, especially for leaderships and teams. Understanding the team language will be very important for you to create direct communication. Now, today we talk about group coaching, we talk about team coachings. In the subsequent videos, I'll be covering the difference between team coaching and group coachings. There are totally different distinctions between team and groups. So let's take a look closer at what direct communication really is and how does it impact us as coaches. So let's take a look at this. There's 5 points here. The first point is that direct communication is clear, articulate, and direct in sharing and providing feedback. So when we hear from the client, we are giving feedback to the client, and oftentimes when we give the feedback to the client, it depends on who the client is. It depends on where the culture the client comes from. And sometimes we may use the hamburger model where we provide something, we recognize something great that's happened, then we provide an area for improvement, and then we close it nicely. So the providing feedback for the client, reframing and articulating to help the client understand from another perspective of what he, she, or they want is or is uncertain about. So really when we hear from the client, we want to reframe the client in the way that the client has a new perspective of things and a new way of seeing things from a new angle. Not often, too often our clients are seeing things from just one singular narrow perspective. No wonder they're not able to be resourceful to take a step back and say, hey, perhaps there might be other areas I could consider. Perhaps there are other areas or other avenues that I can think about. It's not just this one path. It's not just that one path. That may possible other pathways that you can consider as well. So these are different ways for us to consider in the approach of reframing the client. Now, another thing for us to think about is clearly stating the coaching objectives, meeting agenda, and the purpose of the techniques or exercise. So, for example, Mr. Client, so I'm going to take you through today's session, focusing on the outcomes that you desire. Now, during the process of it, I may utilize certain tools and techniques to really help you get there. But we will use them appropriately and judiciously depending on the outcome, depending on the flow and the patterns of the conversation. Now, as a coach, one of the distinctions between the ACC level coach, a PCC, and MCC level coach is that at the MCC level, it's not a matter of me using the skill. It's about when is the most appropriate time to use it. Right, so most ACC, PCC coaches tend to use the skill based on the coaching training that they've received from the school. In Coaching Changes Lives, what we teach first is the heart of coaching. the heart and spirit of coaching. It's not about the tools, it's not about the models, it's about the heart and spirit of coaching. Because it's not about tools that change lives, it's coaching. Conversations changes life. And how do we do that, right? So the next one is about using the language appropriate and respectful to the jargon, to the client, non-sexist, gender neutral, non-racist, non-technical, non-jargon. Now, so we want to use language that's really appropriate to the client so that the client understands where we're coming from and the client understands that, hey, this is not just a fanfare, this is not just something that we are just utilizing for anything, but it's really appropriate for the client. And number 5 is using metaphors and analogy to help illustrate point or paint a verbal picture. So sometimes one of the things that I hear so much across different coachings that I've heard from different people, from different coaches from around the world, is the utilization of metaphors. Now, the utilization of metaphors is a very powerful thing, especially when you need to illustrate a point to the client. However, using the metaphors judiciously is also going to be very important. How we use them, how do we apply them, how do we actually construct them, how do we actually bring them together, it's going to be very critical in helping our clients to move forward. For example, who creates the metaphors? Does the client create a metaphor or do we create a metaphor? How do we utilize the client's words? Because sometimes, I've heard some coaches actually introducing a metaphor that bewilders the client because the client has no knowledge of it. The client has no idea. How do you utilize the metaphor? Because sometimes the metaphor just goes beyond the client. Now, my recommendation when using metaphors is always using the client's metaphors, right? And not our own metaphors. Why? Because our metaphors may make a lot of sense to us, but it may not make a lot of sense to the clients. So learning to do this is going to be very important. In my upcoming book called Metaphorium, that's when I expound a little bit more of how do we engineer metaphors for conversations to move forward. How do we engineer metaphors that will truly change lives? So if you're ready for that, do stay tuned as well. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you're ready for something like that, and I'll be more than happy to share with you. Right? So metaphors truly can shape the client. Why is that so? Because metaphors makes complex simple. Sometimes there's complexity that the clients can articulate out. So what we do is we use metaphors to help the clients to ease into it. They help the clients to create clarity about things. They help the clients to really shape and understand different concepts that they're being stuck at. So sometimes whether the client is stuck, whether there are a lot of things that's happening in the client's mind, or whether the client is unable to articulate out the complexity of feelings, complexity of thought in a conflict the client is facing, and that's why we utilize the metaphors and utilize the client's metaphors. Now, in the process of using the client's metaphors, we use the metaphors to really expand out, to really create distinctions, to help the client say, hey, let's explore this part, let's explore that part. And oftentimes, all this will relate back to the ultimate identity of the client, relate to the ultimate goal of the client. Every single metaphors that we use will always point back to the outcome where the client wants to bring to, right? So that is going to be important in utilizing these 5 points for direct communication. Now I'm going to show you also across a template at the ACC, PCC, MCC level what are these metaphors about. Now, so if you're new to coaching and you're new to professional coaching and you're wondering, is this applicable for me? Yes, it is applicable for you as well. At the ACC level, that stands for Associate Certified Coach, PCC, Professional Certified Coach, and MCC, Master Certified Coach. There are different distinctions, characteristics, and behavioral markers that we look at across to identify the demonstration of the behavior marker. So let's take a look at this. So at the ACC level, the coach sometimes is fairly direct, but usually uses too many words, or feels a need to dress up a question or observation. So sometimes at the beginning stage of coaching, we tend to worry whether the client can understand us, and we tend to add things up to make to dress up the way we say things in a way that the client can observe, and sometimes that cause our questions, our comments, our observations to be really long and lengthy. No wonder the clients are not able to truly understand what we're trying to ask or what we're trying to get at. Now, if we go to the PCC level, right, so that's what happens when the coach is usually direct, but at times feel a need to dress up the question. So there's still this sense of needing to dress up question. But when we go to the MCC level, the coach easily and freely shares what is for the coach without attachment. So for example, right, Mr. Client, is it okay if I share with you some thoughts that I have, and some observations I'm noticing of you? Keeping it as clear, as simple, release that information and with no attachment at all. Sometimes coaches tend to hold on to their observation intuition because they think that that's gospel truth. No, it's not, right? What we sense from the client, we release to the client and leave it as it is. And then from there, we move on further. Now, let's take a look at the next one. The coach shares directly and simply and often incorporates the client's language. So using the way the client phrase, using the way the words of the client, using the client's way of structuring the thoughts, it's going to be great. So many coaches ask me, how do I form questions? I said, really simple. I'm not thinking about forming the questions. I'm using the client's words to form the questions. It's just as simple as that. The third, coach fully trusts the client to choose the responses to the coach communication that is best for the client. So we trust the client and allow the client to decide for themselves what works best for them, right? It's not about what works best for me, it's what works best for the client, what brings greatest awareness to the client. The next one is that the coach invites, respects, and celebrates direct communication back from the client. So when the client gives me the feedback, when the client gives me the response, I celebrate that. I'm not just saying not just acknowledging them with just my nod or my emotions, but I'm also like acknowledging them with words. I would say things like, "Wow, that's great progress over there. Wow, I'm noticing a little shift in you. Thanks so much for sharing. That is a true insight for me, and I felt really touched by your sharing as well." Now, because it's not a coach, the coach position is not higher than the client. The coach position is not lower than the client. The coach is on the same plane as the client. We are co-creating the experience with the client. So it's not one above another, but two together, discovering new possibilities and horizons. And the next one you take a look at is this, that the coach has a broad language base to use and play with and uses the client's language to broaden their base. Now, one of the recommendations I always do for all coaches is this. Every single week, I will share with you a brand new word to think about, new concepts to think about, because I want you to broaden your language base so that in this gallimaufry of language that you can use, you can mix into the pot, and with this adroitness, being able to utilize them judiciously will allow you to move the client in new possibilities and new horizons. Now that doesn't mean that we use words, bombastic words that farrago the client's mind, or words that become so sophisticated that the client cannot understand. No, we're using the words that are appropriate, but expanding our language base, expanding our ways of utilization language, expanding the ways we even phrase words will allow us to understand deeper. So one of my encouragement to coaches is this: not to read coaching books. Read widely, read broadly, read about geography, read about history, read about science, read about politics, read about sociology, read about anthropology, read about archaeology. All these different readings will really help you as a coach, because all this will add in to your profession as a coach. Now, what we think coaching is that people always think that coaching means I need to read coaching books, I need to go deeper in this. No. In fact, coaching is conversation mastery. You want to broaden your language base by reading broadly. You can read fiction books as well. I encourage coaches to read fiction books, because in fiction writing, you begin to learn, hey, there are many ways to say the same thing. For example, saying I love you can be represented in so many different ways. Often this gives us new clues, new ideas of how do we form comments, how do we form observations, how do we form questions in a way that's fresh, in a way that's creative, in a way that's thought-provoking for the client, in a way that moves the client forward. Now, remember this, at the end of the day, all the direct communication that we're doing for the client is to move the client forward. It's to move the client from where they are to where they want to be. Direct communication is not about showing off what I know. It's about bringing the client to a place that they want to be, bringing them from the present state to their desired state. So there you have it, direct communication, a quick overview of what direct communication is. Over the next few videos, I'm going to break down some of these components, and stay tuned for more, because if you're new to our channel, do remember to subscribe and hit the notification button, because we come to you with fresh video contents every single week. Now, if you want to learn more about how this applies in your coaching practice, and if you're in your journey to ACC, PCC, MCC, I encourage you to come and join our community on our Facebook group, Facebook page. Do remember to connect with us. You can find more in the description boxes below. Until next time, this is Jedi here at Coaching Changes Lives.